Welcome to River City Live, and just like that, Richard Nunn just walked on over from one studio to the next. So, welcome.
We didn't have time to put you in our open. I was thinking we should have had you in there, like.
We tried, we didn't have time, and you're a busy guy right now.
But there's a couple of other things that we're doing now.
Your stock is high, but we're glad to have you, so thanks for taking time, again, out of your schedule. We wanted to start off, we have a lot of questions coming in, especially from our viewers, really concerned, as they should be. But it sounds like things are getting a little better. Is that right? It's starting, because it was a 5, now it's a 4.
When it comes by us, it's still going to be a major hurricane, and I think that's what we really need to wrap our minds around here. This isn't Matthew. This isn't a weakening Category 1 as it moves by. And when you think about Matthew, you think about the damage. You think about docks that are still being replaced on the St. Johns River. You think about the surge that took out all of the dunes. And you think about how long the cleanup took for all of the debris to get picked up. That was a Category 1. We have the potential for that Category 3. So 1 to 2, 3 times as strong as it comes by our coastline. So the concerns are really going to get back to the surge and those peak winds, and then the wraparound winds that could cause widespread power outages. I don't know about you guys. I was without power for almost 5 days.
I remember that.
From Matthew. And if it's stronger, it could be longer.
And also the fact that the crews that came from the south won't be available to us like they were before to put the power back on. They'll be very busy doing it down there.
The entire Atlantic eastern coast for Florida is going to be busy trying to put back the pieces of what may come, especially in South Florida, looking at that little turn that it tries to make around Biscayne Bay could be catastrophic. As a matter of fact, it could be unprecedented with the storm surge and the flooding in that area.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, let's get to some of the questions that some of our viewers had, because I feel like these are very common questions that a lot of you at home might have. So the first one's from Carrie Barber. She lives in a mobile home in Palatka, Florida. Should I leave? That's her question.
2 types of mobile homes. There's a manufactured home, and then there's the old style trailer. If it's the older style, I would say you're going to be okay in Palatka. The winds are going to get very peaky at time, as long as it's up to code, being that it's tied down, it's strapped, it's got the anchors in place, you're looking pretty good. The danger comes in not so much with the hurricane force winds, but as the winds turn around and we get into the tornadic part of the forecast, it doesn't matter whether you're in a manufactured mobile home or a regular house, tornadoes are going to do a significant amount of damage. So the concern would be the tornadoes, not so much the impact from the hurricane winds.
And just out of curiosity, when you say, okay, Palatka, so obviously it's a little south, and then it would be a little farther west, and let's just say where like Jacksonville is at, right? Right. Where would be a cutoff, you would say, where it's a little bit better as far as weather?
I-75.
I-75, there you go, okay.
So, and we often include Clay and Putnam County in our coastal zone forecast because they're butted right up next to St. John's, which is narrow. So it puts the influence of what we see on the beaches, the storms that come through, the wind that comes through, it will reach Palatka. You're still going to see some of your peak winds upwards of 50, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah. All right,
you
so
have a
the next
question?
one we have,
so I guess...
I do. Too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was looking ahead. Yeah, so Patrice wanted to know about flood zones versus evacuation zones. She specifically is in Clay County, but this is a question that is a good thing to ask for everybody.
So if you use our web tool, it's on our homepage, and you go and put in your address, and that's going to show you your evacuation zones. That's also based on the flood zone. So if you're in the A or B or the 1 or 2 category, and it can be in Clay County as well. I mean, there's some of the lower parts of our rivers and creeks that go back through Clay County that will undoubtedly see rising waters because we've got the nor'easter that develops for 2 full days before the storm comes in. So that's going to slow down the St. John's, the water's going to rise, and then we have the potential for the surge.
So if you, I'm so sorry to ask you that. I have to just say, if you're in an evacuation zone, is it enough to just evacuate to somebody's house that's 3 blocks away that is not in an evacuation zone?
Yeah, it's possible. You know, there's areas that are immediately along the St. John's where houses are down at water level, like if you get out toward the Bass Haven area and up through even in Rivertown where it kind of flattens out. But yet you move back to the Jacksonville area and you get toward the bluffs, whether it's up around the Buckman Bridge or continuing to come north of that area. There's some pretty good elevation changes. I mean, some of those houses are 20, 30 feet above the normal surface of the river, so you've got plenty of room there. So if you were in Bass Haven or even areas like Switzerland, Fruit Cove, and you move to those houses, you'd be better off.
Yeah, that's a great pointer, because again, a lot of people have these questions, and it's a matter of a block in some cases.
Maggie Holly wanted to know, how bad will the winds be in Bradford County? Are we far enough inland here?
far enough inland not to get the peak hurricane winds. I mean, that's really going to be the brunt along the beaches up through 95. Putnam and Clay County could see some of those. But as far as Union and Bradford County, as we played the models through, I think some of the peak wind gusts come up closer to tropical storm force strength. So you're still going to see, and maybe even getting higher in the 60-mile-an-hour range. So that puts you in the severe thunderstorm category. You're going to see peak winds, but not as strong as you will as you approach 95 and out toward A1A.
Okay, and Shanita asks a similar question about where you could go if the storm does hit. And so, like I was asking a minute ago, I feel like people feel like if they have to evacuate, they need to go 40, 50 miles in when it could just be a matter of a few blocks. But where would be a safe place to go? If you were packing up your family, where'd you send?
If I was packing up my family, I would probably think about areas anywhere from Apalachicola, Pensacola. Not that they're not going to see any rain, but you're going to be far enough away that the wind is going to be largely mitigated. I would even say as far as Pensacola. I mean, head all the way over to Destin or Fort Walton if you've got the time to hit the, if you're going that far, just go to New Orleans. Make it a weekend.
If you're swinging by Pensacola, I have a care package for my son you could drop off at the college, but that's another story.
If you just hit I-10 and you took it for as far as you can, I mean, I-10 still has its own issues because of Harvey. So if you hit I-10 and got into the Panhandle, you'd find yourself in a much different pattern than what we'll have here.
Yeah, now these are all great questions, and it has to do with the weather. Now, this one, we actually had an attorney answer it, and that's if you evacuate and you, let's just say, leave, but it wasn't mandatory evacuation, can you be fired from your job? So earlier today, we met up with John Phillips. He's an attorney. He specializes in civil trial law, and here's what he had to say.
What to do in a hurricane when your job's on the line is a very tough question. And it really depends on whether it's a mandatory evacuation and whether it's a mandatory evacuation by the governor. The governor has the most authority to order evacuation. If he says evacuate, you can't lose your job under any circumstances. If the mayor says it or if it's non-mandatory, it becomes a little bit more subjective because Florida is an at-will state. You can be fired for anything. And there are people that need to continue to work during hurricanes. People with the news, for instance. And so it becomes a tough question. I'll tell you this, my office would take, we do employment law, we would take any case where somebody's been terminated, whether it's voluntary or mandatory, because life is more important than a job, but you got to come back to something too.
Yeah, so there we go, expert answers. And another thing that he mentioned to you, have a trail of documentation if you can, even if it's email. Express your concern with your employer just so you have some backup. Maybe you have young children or you're not feeling well, whatever it is. It could help if it ever got to that point, but again, just
First
keep
and
that
foremost,
trail.
protect yourself.
Definitely, and communication.
Property can be fixed and
You can
things
get
like
a new
that.
job.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you can get a new job.
Or you
but
can hire John Phillips and own the company.
Communicate your thoughts well, I think. Like John said in the media here, there's people that are getting hotels downtown because they may live at the beaches and we're worried about the bridges closing. So at that point, we've already made the decision for our occupation that we want to be here to bring the information.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's great. So online, there's a lot of resources, obviously with News4JAX and everything you could find, but there's also some hacks out there that we wanted to prove, hey, do these really work or not? Now, was it yesterday or the day before you had the freezer hack where you froze water, you put it in your freezer, and that was your indication if the
You freeze the water, then you put a quarter on top of the frozen water, and then when you come back, if you look in your freezer and the quarter is at the bottom, that means there has been enough heat in that freezer to melt that water.
Yeah.
I saw that this morning when Nikki was doing it, and I thought that's just genius.
Yeah,
it's
it's
a really
simple and
way to make sure that you maintain enough cold to support ice and to keep your food
One thing
safe.
you can't overlook, because some people did,
Okay,
you got to make sure the water's frozen.
I did mine too soon, and it just, but it was a great way to show the example of when not to eat your food.
Yeah. No, and that's a great one. So here's another one that we found online. Basically, you take your car charger, and you use a 9-volt battery, you take apart a pen, okay? When you take apart the pen, you get the spring, and then this is the important part here. You take the spring, you put it through the side of your charger, and then you're going to wrap this part of the wire around the negative portion of it. That's a big part here. And I was doing this earlier today, and you gotta be careful because it's sharp. Let's see if that's enough contact there. If not, I'm gonna
If you blew back off your chair right now, wouldn't that be something?
It would be something. All right, so watch. So I'm gonna plug this in. Now watch the green part, see if this, Okay, do you see how that's working now? I don't know if you got that. So it's green there, and I'm going to move my arm away, and you can see my phone is charging.
I'll hold that up for you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do you see that? So it's charging in the upper right-hand side.
Where'd you get that picture? It looks like one of those things they put on the frames at
No, that's not really your family.
That's not me or my family. But and
That's
again, I don't
genius.
know if this would actually like damage your phone, or I feel like this would regulate the current on it.
Yeah,
but
this-
if you're in a bind, I feel like it's something that would work.
Chances are this has, it's got a regulator that's in it, so it should limit the output to whatever this is meant for. So it's probably, I was looking to see if it's got some numbers on it. It's probably somewhere around 1.6 to maybe 3. Oh, it's a 2.1. So that will be fine on a battery. You know, you wouldn't want to use it on one of those big square batteries that, you know, you light up a lamp with.
Yeah.
That may be a bit too much. But again, with the regulator, it should, because when it comes into your car, as you plug this in, that's 12 volt. So
There
it's
you
not,
go.
it's knocking it down substantially.
So and again, if you're in a bind, I mean, this is something that can be really important.
Definitely.
I mean, for real, yeah.
Never would have thought of that.
You're in the situation and your phone's, you don't have power. Like, well, I've got 9 volt, I've got this. So great hack to keep handy.
And again, speaking of like online and all the different information, so the Zello app, that was something that was trending like crazy, especially
50
with
million downloads.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
with Hurricane Harvey. And people were, there's a lot, I guess, bad information out there and good information. And you were talking about this days ago, about this.
Yeah,
app.
because the Cajun Navy used it for their rescuing. It's like a walkie-talkie system. But the thing is that a lot of people took from that you don't need a cell signal, you don't need Wi-Fi. That's just not the case. You have to have the internet or a cell signal to be able to use this app. So
And you have to have some patience. Have you tried it?
No.
I haven't.
It's not the easiest app. Like you put people on your contact list and you try to contact them, and so you kind of have to figure, it's not the easiest app, and there's not a lot of instructions that come with it, but it was invaluable in areas of Houston.
Yeah.
It's exactly meant for that kind of thing. If you're trying to broadcast to a group of people, maybe put your entire family on one talk, kind of like a thread. But the thing is that it does waste your battery a lot. It uses a lot of battery. So you just have to make that decision. If you have a cell signal and you can text, that might be a better way.
Right.
Just know that it's not the way you're going to communicate if you lose all of your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so that was the trick, right? So if Wi-Fi was down, but it uses the cellular part of your phone, right? So you have that, yeah. So
Exactly.
That's
Well,
important.
and then it's appropriate that Mark just showed us the battery hack, so you've got an option if you're trying to make that all work together.
Yeah.
Connections.
And then the guy with his old Nextel phone's going, man, I got this.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
Oh
Richard,
my
thank you
gosh.
so much for hanging out with us and giving a lot of information, not only to us, but to our viewers out there, because I know people are really concerned right now, and we still have, what, a good 48 hours before we really know what's going to happen and where that turn's going to be.
We're watching for the turn. Of course, that's the most important part of this forecast for our area as well, because the further west it goes, then it goes into Florida. It comes up through Florida. It would weaken substantially, but it would put us on a tornadic side of the storm. That would become even more widespread. So to watch this thing with the hourly updates, and of course you can use our app, which is on your phone, even with a battery hack, and or you can get it online.
Well, thanks again. Stick around. More River City Live coming up right after this.